and is still alive. It can't happen 500 years later because they've got to come back to where they came from. So otherwise the weeping and the tears will not be consoled. So this prophecy is wrong 4 different ways. And if there's any doubt about whether or not this prophecy was wrong, let's look at what really happened in Bethlehem. There was not one person in Bethlehem that realized that this prophecy was talking about their kids and used it to save anybody's life. Now, they had rabbis in Bethlehem, they had rabbis in Jerusalem, which is maybe 5 or 6 miles away from Bethlehem. If this prophecy had been specific enough to where it could actually help people, somebody would have said, hey, somebody's going to kill my kid. I better get my kid out of here. That did not happen once, even according to Matthew's account. They had to warn, God had to warn the wise men in a dream. God had to warn Joseph in a dream. And even so, they didn't tell anybody. So this prophecy had no predictive or protective value. If a weatherman makes a prediction that a hurricane's going to hit somewhere and he gets the place, the time, and location wrong and doesn't help anybody, he's going to lose his job. So this prophecy has no predictive or protective value. The last thing, and one of the most theologically significant things, is that Jehovah was really just callous in his immorality himself. The legal term for this is moral turpitude. God protected Jesus, as I said, and the wise men, but he did not protect these little children. God claimed that he knew hundreds of years in advance that this massacre was going to happen. If you have 100 years advance warning, you can prevent just about any crime, especially if you're omnipotent. But God didn't do that. Now this contradicts the Bible. Job 36:15 says, God delivereth the poor in his affliction. Psalm 34:19 promises many are the afflictions of the righteous, but God delivers them out of them all. Psalm 18:27 promises that God will save the afflicted people. Murder is probably the ultimate affliction, and none of these kids got saved, even though God knew in advance that the Bible's true, that it was going to happen. Now this is not just an abstract thought. In 1995, Timothy McVeigh planted a bomb outside of a daycare center at the Murrah building in Oklahoma City and blew it up, and 15 children were killed in addition to over 150 other people. Now, Michael Fortier knew all about this in advance. He helped Timothy McVeigh case the joint and figure out where was the best place to put this bomb for maximum effect. Fortier did not go to the police. He could have very easily gone to the police a day or two before and said, look, we got a problem, but he didn't do that. Okay? He didn't use that knowledge to save anybody's life, and so he went to prison. If me or you knows in advance that somebody's going to kill a bunch of people, and we don't do anything about it, it's a felony. We'll go to prison for it. If God knows, religious people think it's a miracle if he doesn't do anything about it. Now, what is there about God that's more moral than us when our civil law prevents us from doing, will send us to prison for doing something that God points out right here that he did the exact same thing? But it gets worse. And I didn't realize this, and it's not on your transparency because I didn't realize it the other day, until just the other day, that Herod, Bethlehem is a relatively small community. I've been there, and modern Bethlehem is several square miles. So you're talking about Herod probably killing several dozen little boys, which is a terrible crime. It's a horrible thing, and Christians everywhere will say, yeah, Herod's a really wicked person to do that. Okay. Let's turn in our Bibles, if you have one, to Numbers chapter 31. Where God commands the Israelites, and the Lord spake unto Moses, avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. And so the children of Israel killed, I'm paraphrasing here, the children of Israel killed all of the men, and then the women and children of Israel they took captive, and their little ones, and the spoil of the cattle and everything. Moses found out about it. He says, why have you saved all the women alive? Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that has known a man by lying with him. But all the women and children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. So they went and killed all the women, they killed all the male children, but they saved the virgins for themselves. And according to Numbers 31:35, it says they saved 32,000 female virgins, which means that a roughly equivalent number of young boys were killed. So Herod wipes out a few dozen boys, and it's a terrible crime, and I agree, it is. God wipes out tens of thousands of little boys, and it's a miracle. Let's move right along to Matthew chapter 2, verse 23. Matthew 2:23 says, "And he, that is Joseph, dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he, the Messiah, shall be called a Nazarene." That's a pretty specific prophecy, and that's pretty persuasive with just one little problem. There's not any prophecy in the Old Testament that's like that. There's no Testament, nothing in the Old Testament says he's going to live in Nazareth. In fact, you hear Jewish leaders, Nazareth was in Galilee. You hear Jewish leaders saying in the New Testament, no prophet is supposed to come out of Galilee. Well, if this had been true, then they would have said, well, okay, he's coming from Galilee, that makes sense. But as a practical matter, no. The Old Testament does not say anywhere that Jesus came from Nazareth or would come from Nazareth, the Messiah. It also does not say there's a thing called a Nazarene. Samson, the guy with the long hair, was a Nazarene. You don't drink, you don't you cut your hair. There's other things you do. It's a special set-apart person. There's nothing in the Old Testament that says that Jesus would be a Nazarite. There's just nothing like this. So this prophecy was manufactured out of whole cloth, and it's supposed to be some sort of a great fulfillment of prophecy, but it's not, because it's not in the Old Testament. Another one that, and we'll tick through some of these pretty quick because they're pretty simple. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 8, the devil takes Jesus up into an exceeding high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. If you look at Luke 4, verse 5, it adds something to it that's very significant. It says the same thing, and then it says he did it in a moment of time. Now, how high would that mountain have to be for Jesus to be able to see Roman, Chinese, Japanese, Indian, North American, South American empires all at the same time? It can't be done. If the mountain is on the moon, it couldn't be done because the earth is a sphere, not flat. If the earth was flat, it would be theoretically possible to get high enough up that you can see everything, but the earth is not. The earth is a sphere. So you can't do that in a moment of time. The theologically significant part of this is there were only two witnesses to this event, Jesus and the devil. So if the disciples put this in the Gospels, that means that Jesus himself had to tell them this, assuming the Gospels are true, because they didn't have any other way to get it. So Jesus himself, as well as Matthew and Luke, don't know their geometry very well. Moving on to Matthew chapter 5, verse 22. And I'm just ticking through the Bible in the order these appear. I'm not playing holy hopscotch. I'm skipping some verses because there actually are some verses in the Bible that don't contradict other verses in the Bible. I know that may be difficult to believe after today. But not every verse in the Bible contradicts every other verse in the Bible. Matthew chapter 5, verse 22 says, whosoever shall say thou fool shall be in danger of hellfire. Now we have to be careful here because there's several different Greek words that mean fool. Okay? The one that Jesus used here is the word moros. It's where we get our word moron, and has roughly the same moral connotation as a really stupid, foolish person. Jesus called people moros in Matthew 23:17 and Matthew 23:19. So Jesus himself made himself in danger of hellfire by breaking his own commandment. This is a very quick soundbite, and again, it's made much stronger by the Greek language. All of these are very difficult for apologists to worm their way out of, especially these last two. I've heard all sorts of explanations, and basically they have to just lie about what you said to make it work. If they take what you're saying and actually interpret it to mean what you're saying, I have not been able to encounter any kind of a refutation of that. You're going to hear the word apologetics and apologist a lot if you're dealing with Christians who are trying to defend their beliefs. Apologetics comes from the Greek word apologeo. It means to defend. And it means apologetics is the defense of the faith. Apologist is somebody who defends the faith. It doesn't mean apologize. I think it should, but it doesn't. It means to defend. Another term that you'll hear a lot, particularly when you're dealing with creationists, is a term called presuppositional apologetics. That is, you don't attack your opponent's facts. You attack his assumptions. Now, I said that right. That's a little bit hard to swallow. You don't attack your opponent's facts. You attack his assumptions, his presuppositions. And the reason is they can't attack us based on facts, but they don't take